was that? What happened? Was that the thing?
I'm sorry, but we are not going anywhere. We can't.
It hides behind your back and it stays there forever.
You can walk the universe on my back if you just...
Pull to open.
Pull to open.
Yes, and what do you do?
You can do whatever you want.
I never heard of you.
That's the point. We're like mystery shoppers.
I need you to keep everything audible, no private conversations.
Babes, we're vindicated.
It's not appropriate to call me babes.
Okay, hon.
Hello and welcome to Pull to Open, which many thousands of years ago was a random quest through every single Doctor Who story, and they say in the future will be again, but right now it's a quest through season 2 of the new Doctor Who on Disney Plus, and we are working our way through it. My name is Chris Taylor.
And I'm Pete Pachal, babes, and I don't care if it's inappropriate to call you babes.
Okay, hon.
It's just a thing we do here sometimes in the podcast, because it is time to fully embrace this season of Doctor Who, I think. It is time. I'm just going right into it. Yep. This is it. This is it. We are talking about The Well, episode 3 of season 2, series 15, whatever you're calling it, here on Doctor Who land. And this is it, boys.
I call it season 41 myself. Yes.
Others.
But before we go any further, Pete, I think we both got something behind us.
What?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I do.
We both have a shooting hour behind us, which is a little creepy. But yes, we're coming just straight from the well. I drilled a mercury drip down into this one a while back. I've been watching the screeners. Pete, you have just seen it for the first time. What's your reaction?
Seen it, and I feel an obligation right now for whatever reason you've arrived at this podcast and you have not seen The Well. Stop it right now. Go watch The Well. This is going to be spoiler full. And it's going to be spoiler full in very short period of time because I'm just going to give my total hot take out of this one. Whoa. Like, seriously, whoa. I was so blown away by this. This is it. You were last week on Mr. Ring-a-Ding and the Deluxe.
Deluxe version. That's when they do the special edition of Lux. It'll be Deluxe, yes.
Well, you were predicting a Viscount banger. That's my turn, babes. This is a total return to form. I mean, this is kind of, just when you start to doubt our Russell T. Davies and his judgment, which we've probably been doing for at least maybe a week and a half, a little bit here on season 2.
Yeah,
he just
love you, RTD.
Pulls out that rabbit, and it is a crazy, surprising, cybernetic rabbit. That's not a spoiler. I'm just saying random things now. But,
it's a rabbit that is filled with extonic radiation, that was for me, that was the moment I heard that. I was like, wait a minute, because we podcasted about the only story in Doctor Who history to mention extonic radiation, I knew in that moment before we got to that wonderful
reveal.
Carbon 46. Oh, what was the previous name? Did you also, like, what point did you clue in that we are looking at, spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't seen it, a sequel or a prequel? No, a sequel to Midnight. When
there
did you
it
know?
is. Midnight. Right then, the carbon. Not you got it early on the radiation. I don't know if I didn't recognize the radiation. I don't know if that would have given it away for me because the Doctor Who universe kind of tries to sometimes be consistent and it doesn't necessarily mean anything. It's just kind of like looking up in the Doctor Who encyclopedia, what is this planet or whatever, and hey, we can reference it. For example, Magpie Electronics, right? It doesn't mean you're actually literally going to bring back the wire. It's just, it's a cute thing. So there's things that they do of that nature. So even if I'd known that radiation had been said before, I don't think I would have guessed it. But when she said, what was the surface? Yeah.
They talk about galvanic radiation. And then they switched to it was a gray star. It used to be extonic radiation. So
I see. Okay, so it was a little earlier in that same scene, is what you're saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because Doctor Who fans are pretty encyclopedic. Like I used to be, and I still am to a large extent, especially of the classic series. But I don't quite remember all the radiations.
Yeah, now you can't even name every single kind of radiation in Doctor Who. Sad.
Yeah. But when she said diamond, that was it. It was just like, oh, the surface was diamond. Oh, I know what this is, and it's of course sort of the Doctor did too. Just so great. And I love that, it doesn't repeat, it rhymes, what it's doing here is similarly simple, yet just as terrifying, as that episode. Just really smart how the effects were spot on, where she would look up and it would just be a shape for like literally like a split of a second.
I am getting a shiver down the back of my neck just thinking about that. There's something so creepy about sort of seeing, for it must be a frame. I mean, I'm sure Whovians right now are pausing the frames that we're talking about. You see something.
Yeah. By the time, at this point, tons of people have put it up on Twitter, Rewound, even in the moment. We didn't, clearly, but it was like, wow. Like it was, I'm sure it's nothing. You know what I mean? I'm sure it's just a formless thing or whatever, and it doesn't even look like anything. We'll see. We'll jump on Twitter right after this.
Yeah. Well, you can take a certain amount of credit, so I will give you some credit because, of course, I watched the screen of this. I knew in advance that there was a midnight connection, so I went back and I listened to our podcast on midnight. Not sure I should fully recommend it to the audience. No, I should recommend it. It's a brilliant one, but it's an early one. We don't have any video for it, at least not on Spotify. I believe we might have video for it on YouTube. But you mentioned that one thing that would make midnight better is if you just got a little shot of something creature-ish.
When he's looking at the landscape. If there was something that didn't have to look necessarily like reveal anything, but just that looked unusual, like that could have been more like, otherwise it's just sort of this screen of shimmering stuff.
I was listening to that. I listened to you. I heard you say that, and the way you said it, it was kind of like, but it'd just be great if you just had a little bit shot of something behind someone. I think you actually used the word behind. Correct me if I'm wrong, Vance. Go back and listen to it, check it. But I got this. I got a second shiver down my neck of like, holy crap, RTD, maybe he's listening to the pod. Like last week, I was like, did he take the story I wrote when I was 5 years old about Doctor Who stepping out of the television? And I mean, I'm sure it's kind of a common thing, and it may have been a common reaction to midnight. People were just like, because it was famously the first Doctor Who without way we don't see a monster.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely. So let me tell you just a note on how good I thought this was as I was watching it, because I was watching it, sort of taking a little bit of notes, and about a third of the way through, basically the end of the first act, my notes started to get to very sparse, and I actually was like, oh, it's this kind of episode. I sort of turned out the lights because I was getting so tense about it, and I was just like, oh, that's okay. I want to maximize this. Like I just went for it. And
did you smash all the mirrors first? That's the important thing. Smash the mirrors first.
Right. Yeah, totally. Neat little twist. I love that because it basically gives them the solution, or at least the seeming solution. And it's foreshadowed, so it's fair. It's not out of nowhere because you have all the broken mirrors and you're thinking about, what does that mean? And then you kind of forget about it because they forget about it, and then they bring it back, which was nice.
And you've got Mercury seated in there from the start. And of course, Mercury makes for an excellent mirror.
Yeah, it makes for an excellent callback to season 1 of the classic series. And all the Mercury you needed in the fluid links or whatever.
Oh, I don't remember that. What was that on?
That was actually in the Daleks. So we'll get there when we get there. We haven't done it for the podcast.
Indeed. That's why I don't know it. I know extonic radiation. I can't remember, a line from one of the most famous Doctor Who serials. But yeah. So a useful sequel. So let me throw in something that's got my brain buzzing on this, which is the Doctor. We get a little bit more kind of background on Midnight, really. On that he said that the creature was playing games in that, which is not. We don't get anything like that in Midnight itself. No explanation at all.
It is a back read on the Doctor's part. That it was it playing games. I didn't get the sense it was quite playing games. Is that it was like he does mention it was learning.
Yeah,
and it was, I think, because it was like this imitation game in that episode. It sort of seems like a game, but I don't think from the creature's perspective it was a game in the sense that it was like all powerful and just toying with these people. That's not what I got. I also didn't quite get that here, which was good. I did like, again, it rhymes very well. And I'm going to forget everyone's names. And
yes.
I'm sorry about that. But except for Alice, because they said her name and it was spelled out several times on those screens, which was nice. So we can go into this and sort of the details of the episode.
Yeah, Alice Fenley, I'll just say, first of all, if you're wondering, is this the first deaf character in Doctor Who? It is not. You may remember Under the Lake Before the Flood. Cass, a character called Cass in that, who had a translator with her. So
I'm sure the classic series had some kind of stock character who was deaf at some point. I'd have to go through it. Yeah, but it was good that they had some variety there. It certainly made her more sympathetic. So that was it was like she's in danger, but at the same time you're thinking, is that a mislead?
Yeah, you can definitely see that something is up with her, right? They give you enough creepy shots of her so no, she's not telling the full truth. Something is up, and so you're sort of in the trooper's position of like, do we trust her? And
I like how she becomes more sympathetic in that moment. It's when it's fully revealed, but she also, in a sense, sort of turns the tables on them threatening her, because she doesn't like it, but she kind of has that power. She's like, if you kill me, it's just going to go on to you. Like, why do you think I'm the only one left? It all makes sense. Like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, of course. Now it has nowhere else to go. There's no point in killing her. Yeah,
the setup is very interesting, and I got to say, it took a second viewing until I was like, how exactly does this work? Because I realized there's got to be someone at 6 o'clock as well as midnight for it to work, right? Because you get those scenes at the end when the commander takes the creature on herself, where she's like turning her back and running out of the room, and so the first time I watched that, I was like, like she turned her back. How does this work? But watching the explanation again, it's clear they have to be opposites. Like, because then there's, if you're just seeing her from one side, there's still a back, but there can be no back if you've got people at opposite sides of her. So was that clear enough to you?
It's clear enough in terms of the rules. It doesn't really make a ton of sense, but it's not supposed to. And you can kind of headcanon this enough on the science and sort of think, well, it's got to be some kind of a higher dimensional creature than. But if the 360 is covered, then perhaps there's simply nowhere to run or whatever, or nowhere to sort of fully hide. I mean, the only reason it would do that, like if it has the power to kill them at any time, I don't think it necessarily does. You have to get a little more headcanon on this, and that it's equally vulnerable and dangerous once you're in that position. Because like, one, why kill people unless you're just getting pleasure? There must be some vulnerability there as well. I don't know. You'd have to sort of really think this out, but it's makes as much sense as the Weeping Angels being like quantum locked and they can only be observed. It's Doctor Who rules and Doctor Who science. You can kind of fill in enough of the gaps. The creature's motivation, I think the Doctor isn't totally off target. Again, I don't think it's just trying to survive. I do think it does seem like a malevolent force. He calls it vile. I'd say that's accurate. The only hint we've ever gotten of it as a sort of conscious creature, there's only two. There's where it speaks to the Doctor, and we don't really hear it in this episode. And check mark on Shooty caught crying.
Yes.
Which so shockingly, it was then and not at the end. Like I thought he was going to just start bawling when, again, I forget the trooper's name, but when she sacrifices herself, he's
Right.
just more shocked. And I don't think there's even a tear, but
Mm.
he sort of cries when he connects with the creature. And it's sort of a combination of like realization and fear and everything that's sort of coming together at that moment. I mean, the direction was spot on, like on all of these scenes just carried on for exactly the right amount of time, building up the right amount of tension.
Mm.
And, the turns and the camera shots, like it was gorgeous. Again, Disney money, they spent it. But honestly, I don't think it looked like astronomically better than what you would
No.
get in something like The Impossible Planet or what have you. This is sort of future
Exactly.
factory type look. But
Exactly.
it did look very good.
The story that I went straight to mentally. I mean, I
Yeah.
kind of joked about it at the end of last week's podcast. And if you remember that, it says something like, "Oh, well, it looks like we're going back to the Satan bit." Well, we kind of were. I mean, the Doctor almost did that speech again of like standing on the edge of the big hole, and it kind of
Yeah.
would have fit here pretty well as of that part of your brain that says, "Go on."
Right.
Jump, which would have had ironic force this time, given that the captain sacrifices herself in that way. I gotta say, this is our hot take. When we get to the cold take, we'll get to what the Clara Splinter did for this. But I've got to say, it's mighty convenient that Alice was found in a room where she's sitting in the middle of a big circle. So that you can see you have that great shot from above. I mean, I'll buy it. It totally works. And the fun thing about that is, like a lot of the best Doctor Who stuff, you can imagine a kid's game based on it, right? That whole thing of like,
sure, exactly.
You could totally just chalk out a circle around someone, and again, that kind of creepy factor of like, if someone's exactly in front and exactly behind you at all times, the person behind you dies. Like
Let's play midnight.
Let's play midnight.
You die at midnight. I will say the line when he says it, "You die at midnight," was a little on the nose. It didn't ruin it. I will say it came close because it's a little like, okay, like it's one of those, I'm going to consciously name check the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And also, like, it seems like the type of thing where wouldn't they kind of go like, wait a minute, doesn't that sound a little like we're in a show? And maybe that's the point, right? Because honestly, when we see Mrs. Flood at the end, she doesn't do her thing of looking at the audio, or doesn't seem to. Technically, she does because she's looking through the screen at the other soldier woman, and so she's technically looking at the audience, but she's not talking to the audience. So for the first time, she's not breaking the fourth wall.
Right. Well, second time because she didn't actually do it in Lux.
That's true.
Trick of the line. I think we can say that she's only breaking the fourth wall in 2023 to 2025, like the present day.
Right.
That's the only version of Mrs. Flood who can do it, because she did it in the Robot Revolution. She had that moment of "you ain't seen me," and now she ain't seen us in her other guises, while she goes a bit Susan Twisty.
Yeah, it is. I got to say, I'm sure this has been observed before, but it's a weakness that he's doing literally the exact same thing as last season. Like an elderly woman who is just kind of in all these places all over time and space. And we just did this with Susan Twist, right? Like it's...
Well... I think we're meant to grok a couple of things. I'll say them in order of confidence. I think Mrs. Flood is quite clearly a god, a member of the Pantheon. And so it would make sense for her to be able to do something in a similar way to Sutek creating Sutek.
I have no problem with the technical thing of her doing it. It's just that it's literally the same thing. Like we just did this, it's like one season we said Bad Wolf, and the next season it's Little Red Riding Hood are the words we're seeing everywhere. It's just kind of like, what? If
only Little Red Riding Hood was an anagram of Doctor Who, could have used that for the Torchwood reveal. Okay, I'll say the other thing that I have slightly less confidence in. I think it's really indicating that the mysterious thing on Midnight is a god of some sort. Maybe this is how gods are born? I
hope not. I honestly hope. I wouldn't say it's a
the playing
god.
of
Yeah.
games, the focus on playing games that takes us back to what the Doctor was saying
But
in Lux last week.
Well, it's got to be some kind of like superpowered thing, and obviously it doesn't age or so. So arguably yes, but I don't think it's part of the pantheon. I think that would kind of ruin what the whole midnight arc. I think it's a neat little thing that you can return to. I don't know if they could return to it again. Maybe this will end up being a trilogy with a Doctor, 4 Doctors hence. But I do think it's just there. It's not part of some grand thing, and it was smart. Like again, it's one of these things. Like it's such a well-regarded episode. It's really a new classic, as we kind of learned from not just doing it for the podcast, but the reaction to our podcast of that one.
Yeah, absolutely. We did. We did not. We thought that it had been a little bit forgotten. We enjoyed it, and I thought certainly that it. So it was filmed at the same time as Turn Left. I said something in the podcast. The effect of Turn Left was the one that kind of really emerged from that, and Midnight's been a bit forgotten. Well, boy, did our audience disagree with me on that one. Midnight is a modern classic, and it's interesting because again, going back listening to the podcast, I was reminded RTD thought it was a thin conceit. Like he wrote it very quickly in one weekend. He was worried that it was a bit too basic, kind of, but it is.
It's funny. It's similar to Moffat in Blink, almost.
Yeah.
It was not quite that quick, but it was just something he'd sort of written as a short story and thought, this might be, if I twist it a bit, maybe it could be a episode, and boy, was it ever.
It was. And one thing that struck us at the time, what was that what the Doctor says here was that he'd never been so scared, which you might, if you don't remember Midnight, be like, really? But then, like, think about what happened. His voice was taken away from him. Everyone was rebelling against him. And they were about to throw him out of the door. Like we did say in that podcast, like if you were to end Doctor Who at any point, this might be the way to go, especially with the fact that,
and also he didn't
hubris.
get out of it. Like that was the thing. I could see him being so terrified because it wasn't a clever solution. It wasn't the sonic screwdriver. There was no last minute rescue, except that there was the nameless woman. Yeah. Who was the flight attendant or the bus attendant, essentially. And because she sacrificed herself, he got to live. And again, in this story, like it rhymes, and it rhymed really, really well. And I like that you give, what's the commander's name? Do you know? I completely forget.
The commander, keep it, but
the sharpshooter commander, she has so much agency in that moment, and it's really neat. And honestly, like I didn't quite know what she was doing. I thought, is she going to shoot through Belinda to shoot the thing? And I kind of thought that's what they were doing, and I thought that shouldn't work, that because it's kind of not there, physically. Right. And so, but then I realized, I get, like it's jumping from her to the person who killed it.
Yes.
Who killed that. And then you kind of, as she was running, I was sort of putting that together because I was like, why is she running? Oh.
Yeah, I guess just that little gust of wind when she takes the shot that says that it's worked. So I guess, Belinda dies for a second, or like it's close enough to death, or, I mean, she has to be defibrillated afterwards.
Yeah, I think that's the idea. It's sort of like the end of season 1 of Buffy, where, I don't know if you've seen Buffy, but
I've not. But there's a take the shot moment where
there's kind of a take the shot moment, and someone has to die, but only for a bit. Very important to that season. Anyway, done with that. So I've been raving about this episode. It's so amazing. I will say a couple things that irritated me, and they're early on. It's mostly the cold open, where they're basically, again, not just rhyming, repeating the last episode where they change into the spacesuits, or as I called it, the future athleisure or whatever.
Yes, Lululemon spacesuits.
Complete with armor. And one, I just thought it's like we're doing this again. And I guess we're sort of seeing a progression of her getting more excited and into this. It'd be interesting to see if that continues after this episode, where she had to be killed and revived, but it was literally the same thing. Both the sort of the feel and beats of that, and just the literal costume change. Also nitpick: how did they even know to change into those things? You didn't need to do much for them to make that clear. But I feel like it's something they should have done. Even if it's for a split second on the screen, and maybe it was there because I've only seen it once. But if he goes like, "Oh, like I've got a quick shot of someone outside. This is what we need to wear," or whatever.
Or you tackle it in the moment where the Doctor's explaining that the TARDIS translates. He could have just pivoted straight to, and it'll pick us out some clothes. And then they go running off to the wardrobe. I kind of look. It's clear that RTD just really likes the clothes scene. He's kind of running away with it. I like a thing. I'm going to get super nerdy and British kid show with this. There's a kid show. It was a kid show in the UK called Mr. Ben. It was an animated series. Basically, Mr. Ben goes into the changing room of a mysterious clothes shop and changes from his bowler hat into something like a knight in shining armor. And he goes through another door and he's in an adventure, right? It was always very Doctor Who-ish. Basically, that's what RTD has decided to do. He's like throwing in a costume change every time.
I mean, here's the thing. You can have too much of a good thing, and a lot of that stuff, I mean, I think not all fans are are fans of fashion shows, okay? Like some people that and I'd wager some of them are Doctor Who fans. Basically, if there isn't a lot of meaning to it, like either this is a period thing, and I guess this is sort of a future period thing, or it's literally a regeneration episode, and there's the whole usually finding your outfit scene. I think it can be overdone. Last thing I would say about it.
Okay, you go ahead.
Even if you like it and you say we should do one of these every episode, why is she excited by being dressed like Halo? Like, oh, this looks so cool. Does it though? Like, wouldn't your reaction be like, wait a minute, why am I dressed like a video game character? Like, as cool as it might be, she's like a little too excited for this very unusual thing that looks like you're about to walk into a war zone. Like that doesn't work.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying there. I like it as a fun thing. I like, a little behind the scenes thing here. I'm hearing from a lot of friends who are on Instagram that they are getting served so many ads, or they were served so many ads in the run up to Lux of specifically that scene, the clothes changing scene. And I kind of like the idea that people who are not into Doctor Who could get dragged into it by just like, oh, you're scrolling on Insta or TikTok or whatever, and you just see that moment. Oh, what are they going to change into this week? That could be a very interesting way for the show to telegraph to casual fans, like what kind of version we're looking at this week. And
it's like, try it. Yeah. Project Runway for a year. Let's see how it goes.
Why not? And I also like Ncuti is clearly, his incarnation of the Doctor, let's call him 15 for the sake of argument. And 15th Doctor, not counting Timeless Child, we won't even go there. But yeah, he's clearly more into clothes, right? He's clearly just more into it. And as you say, his predecessors were always like, one and done with the wardrobe. It's like the Doctor only ever finds it when he's just regenerated. Well, why not make more use of it? It makes sense as your head would get older. Maybe you start to be interested in different things. And maybe this is what Pertwee would have done if he'd actually had a, functional TARDIS for most of his tenure.
Yeah, Pertwee had some variety, but it was kind of variations on a very clear theme. Okay, so love the references to Alien, which was neat. The nuke it from orbit thing was awesome. When they said that, I was like,
eventually agrees with that, right?
Yeah, that's what I cool. I like that they didn't just sort of have it be a reference. It was like it's a good one. It's a good reference. Two, it's a good strategy. But I also like that the Doctor just gets on board with it. Like, no, that's what we got to do. Which sort of going to the Doctor, that it just shows just how extreme this is and how seriously he takes it.
Sometimes he topples worlds.
Yeah. There was the stuff about with the signing and, nurses are required in the future to do it. Okay, fine. You do that stuff. And I know how Belinda's funny because she agrees it should be the law, but she doesn't know sign language. It's like, okay, well, but then you should be thrown in jail, right? Is that it's a little bit
Yeah. I mean,
little
yeah,
odd,
fair
but it's
point,
like
fair
you
point.
could argue it's criticizing sort of those contradictory opinions that people often
Mhm.
have. In other words, like good for thee but not for me kind of stuff. You could
Right.
basically, yeah. Anyway,
Which is nice for Belinda to sort of be on the receiving end of that for the change, because she's sort of been acting as the moral center for so long. It's nice to have someone, do a moral center on her.
yeah, totally.
So
I will
that's
still.
good.
I do wonder though, and maybe this is just a nerdy sci-fi thing to wonder, like how is it there are still deaf people in the year 500,000? Like wouldn't there just be some cybernetic implant you could easily
Right.
just put in and you're good to go?
Yeah, some easy way of regenerating the hairs and the. Well, let's dial the nerdiness down a little bit, but the importance up. Earth is missing. Humanity is missing.
Right.
And yet also the events of Midnight still happened.
Right.
Midnight was very human-y, I gotta say, going back and rewatching it.
Is it explicitly a human colony? I forget.
Pretty sure it
honestly.
does, yeah. And we sort of critiqued it at the time for the fact that they're all wearing like early 21st century gear, and like
Right.
watching Eurovision, and it's very of its era. And I think there are several references to humans. So yeah, you got to headcanon it a bit. If Earth disappears, I guess the Doctor just went on the bus with a bunch of Lombardians or whatever they are.
Yeah, I guess it would have been different. Yeah, if things would have happened differently, perhaps. Maybe it was just I can imagine it was a bunch of Stuntarans or something. That'd be pretty funny.
But what do you think about that as a twist, as a season arc? Like the Doctor, I don't think we've seen this before, right? The Doctor suddenly having to sort of deal with a turn left situation himself with the disappearance of Earth.
We don't know enough about it yet to fully judge it. I will say the reveal of it in this episode, that they get it, the stakes in this episode, was a very smart choice of getting that double whammy of increasing the tension in midway through, like right at the end of that act where they're all what's with Earth. And so it just creates another sort of ominous aura around the entire show right while they're doing this extremely suspenseful situation. So that was really smart. What's happened to the future? Yeah, I mean, the Doctor seems genuinely worried. That's pretty good. It'll be interesting to see after this episode whether the stakes change for Belinda, because it's like, well, yeah, you could go home, but clearly something really bad is going to happen to Earth. Like maybe you should simply be on board with the investigation, and then we'll get you home. Yeah,
and maybe we might see that twist, because obviously next week we're going to go to Earth and meet Ruby Sunday, presumably before May the 25th, 2025. Some period just before that. I'm guessing that's probably going to be the excuse for getting Ruby back in there. But yeah, I kind of like the idea, and we talk a lot about Douglas Adams and the times that Doctor Who is Douglas Adams-ish. Well, here's a nice one. This notion that you could take Earth out of the equation of the future, and it wouldn't actually change that much. Right?
Oh, yeah.
We've been told so much for so many seasons of New Who. We've always had that speech of, "Oh, you humans are brilliant. You've spread out across the galaxy, and here you are."
It was even in this episode.
Yeah.
It's like early on, he talks about humans go on forever. Which, if you think about it, like, I guess they just assumed those people were human, and they're obviously not. This is not new in Doctor Who, of course, because, we've seen a lot of places where they go and it's either unspecified or they're explicitly not human,
right?
Like in the future. But yeah, it's interesting that they're doing this almost human irrelevancy. Like the universe goes on, and there are no great or bountiful empires of the human race, anyway.
And if you fast forward to Utopia at the end of time, I wonder if it just means the Lombardians become the Toclafane or something like that. Like time heals the wound, and just someone else does all the things that humanity does in the Doctor timeline.
I guess all those Reapers just come out and paper over it. Interesting.
Hey.
I mean, I wonder if they might
Yeah.
address that in some kind of hand wavy way. Maybe not.
Yeah, but it's nice to be humans to be insignificant again. That's a popular thing to say on a podcast for humans, but I'm going to take that bold approach. Yeah, humans, it's nice that you're not in this so much.
Except you have all those races that look exactly like them.
Yeah, I gotta say, it's actually a nice touch that I don't think this would have worked as well without the Miss Belinda Chandrians or whatever they were called. You know, that you have to introduce another human-looking race with a completely different name and physiology before you can do
Right. That's a good point. Yeah, that they're doing that, and they're also kind of. I don't know if this is a subtle thing or what RTD just decided not to do it, but there's no visual change whatsoever. Like Star Trek back in the day would famously just do some weirdness with the nose or the eyebrows or the
ridges on
the temples or whatever. You'd have something that would sort of signify these are aliens. But it just got so repetitive and dumb after the 16th time or whatever.
Right.
And now he's just sort of like, yeah, I mean, we're just having them look like people. Like that's what the show always did, unless they had a little bit of a budget. So we're doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, no one's going to complain at sort of, being humanoid centric in the design of other alien races who just sort of presume that maybe the humanoid form is a pretty popular one throughout the galaxy and just springs up, or you got some sort of panspermia theory. I don't know, pick your poison.
Yeah. So I liked also the return to form, just to sort of finish off some of the notes of the structure, which it sort of almost emphasized the difference between New Who and Classic Who and the Doctor winning people over. Because in this one, and this is pretty normal in New Who, where he whips out the psychic paper, assumes some authority, but that sort of rapidly wanes because he's acting all weird, and certainly the high-strung guy really doesn't like him. That was kind of neat little bit where he says, like, don't call me babes, or babes is inappropriate, or something like that.
Which rhymes with midnight. And we were talking about that in the podcast as well. The fact that the Doctor does use his psychic paper in the beginning, but there's something about the situation, like he thinks that he can just get away without it, that he can just charm his way through, so he doesn't use it again.
Yeah, yeah. And then there's the whole thing of you not sure. I don't know if you certainly dislike the second in command or the high-strung guy, but the commander you don't really like either, because she's very cold and she says the line "hope is irrelevant" at one point. She just says, okay, well, I guess you're kind of cold and potentially not a nice person. But then slowly, like, you kind of get to know her a bit by the sharpshooting and whatever. And then, but like, as I was saying, I think the Doctor sort of believably wins them over with his empathetic ways with Alice. And, being a doctor, frankly, he has good bedside manner.
He does. I got to say that, whatever military this is in the far future, they're going to rethink their system for someone taking emergency control from the captain, right? If you just need a nominator and a seconder.
Like your clique overrides your clique.
Yeah.
Like there's no... Like, you would think the person who's most loyal to her would immediately go like, I'm usurping from you. Do I have a second? And half the people would say second, third, fourth, fifth, like, well, that didn't work.
Yeah. That's so that's a bit weird, but I guess you need that moment to really kick off. And to your point earlier about, like, you could do this in Old Who and it's all about ratcheting up the tension. I love. Tension was ratcheted up for so long, and then death. Slam, boom, boom. It really, that pays off so well.
Yeah. Very cool. This is it, guys. It's back. Doctor Who's back, baby. It took a few episodes, but we're finally completely back. Just masterful.
We did say that we talked about this with Space Babies. We talked about this with the Robot Revolution. RTD does not give you his best stuff first. He is slowly ramping up, and maybe this is a thing that every Doctor Who season has to go through, that sort of point of Oh, this is Doctor Who.
I hope not. I do like, broadly we'll have some kind of reflection on this season and perhaps even this mini era of Doctor Who, because it's going to be a while before we get anything new when season 2 ends, other than the war between the land and the sea. So look at that. But I think this is, you're right that he doesn't peak early. He's never really been the master of these season openers, and he sort of eases into it and sort of finishes strong most of the time. But is that the best thing for the show right now? Are there other weaknesses? I don't know. I will say, after watching this episode, I'm not thinking about any of those weaknesses. Sure, there were my nitpicks with the cold open and other things, but this was just amazing.
Well, I'm
my favorite so far by far.
Fantastic. I loved it. I've got to say, I still think I like Lux better. And also, I've got to report in the last week, I've had a lot of friends who are sort of, in the casual fan realm, who are kind of wowed by Lux, and they're, all in on the question of who is Mrs. Blood. And like, it does seem to be bring people back, babes. So yeah, I agree with you. We slightly disagree on the order of the season so far. This is the boom, as it were, of season 2. This is the boom. This is the moment you're like, oh, it's back. Yeah.
Boom.
Boom. All right. Boom goes the diamond.
It was so explosive that I didn't even get a chance to do housekeeping. I even had a big bold thing in my notes, housekeeping, and I didn't do it because I didn't get a chance to tell everyone to follow us on social at Pull to Open or Pull to Open 63 on most social networks. Subscribe to our newsletter at pulltoopen.net. Become a true companion of the podcast at youtube.com/Pull to Open. And hey, why don't you leave a review on the Apple Podcast app? Best place to do it. And you could even leave a Whomoji there. Google it.
Google it, indeed. And, if you do these things, we will not stand behind you and whisper at scary hours of the day. But
we might push you out of a spacecraft if if you get that helmet on just right.
Yes, please fit your helmets properly. Please remember to activate your retro boosters before you land on the planet. But yes, the clock is ticking down to midnight. We're almost there. We're almost done. Pete, any last thoughts on on what we're going to see next? The return of Ruby Sunday.
No, though I'm curious if this is it for her. Has that been publicly talked about? Is it that she's only in one episode, or is she rejoining Team TARDIS for the rest of the season? I've been blissfully spoiled on that too. Yeah, I feel like the publicity photos seem to imply that she was around for longer than just a guest cameo, like a la Martha Jones. So, but looks interesting. Yep. Yeah, love to see Ruby again. I'm on record as saying Millie Gibson was the breakout star of season 1.
Absolutely.
Ready to see more of her.
Yes, I'm looking forward to what happens when companions from different seasons meet, the Misses and the X, as it were. Welcome to Every Doctor's Worst Nightmare. Is that going to be the interaction? We will find out next week in the next Pull to Open hot take. And go Google us in the meantime, and we will see you next week.
I would say you would do well to rejoin us next week.
Hey!
See you, folks.
All right. We went down the well of puns. Take care.